experience?
Oh. Well, our class actually decided that we were going to create a self-published anthology of, and it's almost all memoir. And so this came out last year. It's called Secret Histories, Stories of Courage, Risk, and Revelation. And so my piece in this anthology relates to a major metaphysical experience that I had while in the course of my work, as Ellen and I would say, at Microsoft. And it was very shocking and blindsided me completely and completely blew my life apart. But I had to keep working because I had children and needed the money. And so I wrote about it, and I wrote about it a lot, and that really helped me with processing. But one of the problems that I had was that here I was working in this responsible position at a company that's not very woo-woo, as you can imagine, and so I was kind of dealing with these dual realities. And when I wrote about it, I had to figure out a way to convey how the impact of this experience. And so in Brenda's class, we critique each other's work, and one of the things that people said to me was, and that Brenda, the really good advice Brenda gave me was, you have to ground this, because it's so out there that regular people who haven't had this experience aren't going to be able to relate to it. And so I really worked at that, and it helped a lot. So I thought that was really good. And I think for anybody who's writing anything about spirituality, that's super helpful. So.
Yes. Questions?
Where are your classes held?
In Seattle. Every now and then I have intensives that I do, and I may be in Portland at some point. Maybe we should do an intensive. Yeah. Okay.
What's an intensive?
Like a seminar for a day or something for an afternoon. I could come down and stay with my dear friend Maureen, and we could do, the two of us could do something together. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I came late. I apologize, but my real question is how to begin.
Okay, turn to chapter 1. You know, I just have to say, I'm really kind of making fun of myself, but it is so wonderful to have gotten this down. Because, you know, I have ongoing classes. Some of my students have been with me for 10 years, some of them are new. And I'm just, yesterday a student called me. I've worked with him. He worked with Jane Goodall, and I've just edited his book. And he called me and said, oh my God, an agent wants to represent my book. I have a 10 o'clock phone call with her tomorrow. Can you and I have a talk? And I'm on book tour. So I was actually able to say, John, turn to page XX and read the section that Sarah Jane and I wrote on agents, and you will be fully prepared. And then I don't have to do it, you know, because I'm a limited quantity. And I love my students, and I really am grounded by my students. And so now I get to say, turn to chapter 1, page 6. Start anywhere. Because if you start anywhere, no matter where you start, you'll end up where you're meant to be. And that is a whole thing about quilt pieces. Our videographer is very much in demand. Quilt pieces, just start writing scenes upon scene upon scene. Get a big pegboard, start putting up sticky pads that are scenes. And pretty soon you'll see a pattern. And it may take a year, it may take 2, or maybe you're very organized and you immediately see it. But that's how I always start. Yeah, questions? In the back.
Hi. So do you use any like metaphysical archetypes to frame your memoirs?
Do we use any metaphysical archetypes to frame our memoirs? You want to say something about that, Maureen? You've edited so many memoirs.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to clarify the question.
Okay, like for example, like when the memoir, the self would be the hero, right? Okay. So do you show the journey of the self as hero, for example?
In Joseph Campbell's?
Yeah, like for example, like.
Or there's a screenwriter who does that too, yeah.
You know,
my gut response to you right now, not knowing you or anything about you or what you're writing, I would say you need to get out of your head. You're intellectualizing the hell out of whatever it is you're writing about. And one of the biggest things that I push with my authors that I work with is to go to those difficult places that you know you're avoiding and write them down. Now maybe you're never going to show anybody, but you need to get honest with yourself instead of thinking, you know, I don't know if a hero would do that, so maybe I won't include that in my memoir. Then you are doing this you're editing yourself out of your own amazing story. And I tell authors all the time, writers, you know, the more vulnerable that you can be, the more your reader will be with you, because they will know you are speaking a truth. It's your truth from your gut. And it's when we keep trying to hide out, and you know, and it's interesting because I've read so many manuscripts over the years and worked with people. There are times where it's a body feeling I get. It's not even up here. It's like, this person is hiding out. And I had this one author, God love her, she survived a domestic violence situation where her best friend was killed and he came and shot her in the gut in the middle of the night. And we worked on this for months, and I kept getting this feeling, something's not right here. I don't know what it is, and I kept going back. And then her sister actually had been in Brenda's class. You remember this? And I said, where's your husband? What does he think about this? And she was just kind of vague. And then it came out that he had a whole other life and a whole other relationship in another city, and he really wasn't present. But she wasn't willing to be honest about what the truth was of her life in this really horrible situation that had happened and that she had survived. She was an incredible survivor. And she said, I'm just not willing to go there. And I said, well, you know, it is your call because it is your life. And each of us gets to say what we will and won't do. I did have the opportunity to publish Barbara Roberts' book, Death Without Denial, Grief Without Apology, which is kind of a how-to, but it's also a memoir that she wrote about when she was governor and her husband died. And we, you know, and when I first started working with her, she could say, well, we did this, and then we did that, and then, and then I would like, okay, so what were you feeling? What were you, you know, let's pull some senses into this. And she told me, she said, you know, there's one thing, I can't put it in the book. I'm embarrassed. I feel bad about it. And I said, you know what, that's okay. If you can put it in there, great. And if you make a decision on that one thing that it can't go in, then you get to make that call as the writer. But I always push for how vulnerable can you be? How much of the truth of your life can you share? And I'm so pleased, one of my authors is here, Alice Hardesty, and she just finished her book, An Uncommon Cancer Journey. And the big thing that Alice and I spent time talking about a lot was vulnerability. And I had suggested she watch some TED Talks by Brene Brown. I don't know if any of you know. I was so moved by her. And she talks about the power of vulnerability. So I hope that helps. Okay.
Okay, very far in the back. Yes, yes.
Hello. I am a college student currently, and I really want to get into the publishing industry. So any advice there would be lovely. I want to
Well,
make books.
let's have Marlene take that first, and then Maureen, the Celtic crew.
This is a tough one because it's very difficult to get into publishing, first of all, and it seems like it's more difficult these days with the consolidation of presses and, you know, using freelancers for a lot of work. I mean, you may feel like I've got these degrees, I've got my English degrees, I'm really good at language, I can do all these things. You'll never be hired as a freelancer until you actually have worked as an editor in-house, and it's like a catch-22. So, my very best advice is to look for
and I know there are a lot of them, unpaid internships that involve writing and editing, just so you get a start somewhere. You know, Portland's a good town for it, so Seattle. Better than they used to be, because it used to be that you had to go to New York or Chicago or someplace like that to make something happen. You don't have to. The other thing is, if you can afford it, and I know most students can't once they've gotten out of college, there are a couple of publishing institutes that have intensive programs. The Denver Publishing Institute is a really excellent one, and it's run by Joyce Meskis, who founded Tattered Cover Books, which is kind of like the Powells of you know, the prairie. And that's, I believe it's a 6-week or a 10-week course. It's an investment in your future because you have an opportunity to be taught by the best in the industry who come there to teach and to cull. They're looking for young hopefuls who show promise, who have some talent. So that may be something that you'd want to do. But you really, you know, you just have to find that something that you can cobble together that becomes enough that it looks substantial. I'll tell you my own beginning, which was, you know, I got out of the University of Washington. I had a Master of Arts in Creative Writing. I thought, oh boy, I'm ready, you know, world, see, I'm here, and I want to be an editor, so hire me now. That didn't work very well. And I ended up, you know, running being an office manager for a research project on campus at the University of Washington. And I thought, oh my God, I am so far from my dream, you know, and here I was a star student, and I thought this was just going to be my ticket to, you know, wherever I wanted to go. I couldn't even get hired on the campus at University of Washington as an editor because they wanted me to have editorial experience first. It's like, where do you get it? So I ran this research office for a couple of years. I had an opportunity to, I had a wonderful maniac I worked for she was glorious. I mean, I love Anne Strice-Guth. She was a researcher who was researching fetal alcohol syndrome. And she published like crazy. It seemed like every other day she would come in sleepless with a sheaf of papers that she wanted me to turn into a manuscript to send out to yet another journal. Yeah, she was great. So, but I was getting my experience working for her, cleaning these manuscripts up. You know, first it was just kind of cleaning it, you know, scrubbing I call it, where it was copy editing, basic proofreading, you know, but as she gained confidence in what I could do, more and more she had me write things, including narrative portions of big grant proposals. You know, so I was doing all kinds of stuff, you know, for really shitty pay, but hey, I was learning. I was starting to put these things together. And the next thing I knew, I'd been there 2.5 years, and there was a job. There was a job advertised finally with a local magazine in Seattle, and I thought, and it was just a, you know, beginning editorial assistant. That's usually the first position. I applied for it. I was a finalist. I was so excited. I thought, oh yeah, I got this locked. Okay, I got this locked. I didn't have it locked. In fact, I lost out to a guy I went to graduate school. I went, oh God, he's such a teddy bear. He's not going to be a good editor. But he got the job, and I think he did a pretty credible job. But about a week later, you know, after I'd kind of given up and thought, all right, another 2-year wait, I'm going to be, you know, editing academic papers for, you know, forever. I got a call back from Harriet Bullitt, who owned the company, and who wanted me to come in and interview for a job with the book division there. You know, would I be interested? Like, would I be interested? I mean, I was so excited. And, you know, she was rigorous. She asked me questions that I wasn't fully prepared to answer, but I did my very best. And before I knew it, I had that job. And that was the first step. And I built everything from there. And that's really kind of what you have to wait for, and you can't afford to give up. You know, when you hit those roadblocks, you know, and what you really think should have happened or what you expect to have happened doesn't right away, it really does take a kind of patience and passion for what you're going to have access to finally, what you'll get to do. Because I have to say, it's a glorious career. I mean, I hear teachers saying the same thing about teaching. You know, I've done it for more than 30 years. I can't think of anything I would rather have done. So that's a long answer to a short question, right?
That's excellent.
It's a wonderful answer.
But
It is.
yeah.
Okay, let's have you, mister, please. Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't see you very well.
Okay, what is the advisability of touching on or incorporating historical events or, you know, some history of the period or the time into your memoir?
It's really, really important, and this is something I've noticed with my students. Men automatically ground themselves in history, his story. They'll say, you know, the day I fell in love, I was going to attend an anti-Vietnam rally.
Yeah.
And you go, all right, I know where I am in time and space. A woman will say, most of them will say, the day I fell in love, I was wearing an orange dress, you know. And I continually say, what year was it? I'll write in the margins, historical context. So all of you women know that it's also her story. And you belong to history. And you must always tell us time, space, and setting. There's a whole chapter in here on a sense of where you are on setting. It's really crucial. Because if you're ungrounded, if you don't set us in a place where we can identify, then we can't show up. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
In the tangents in writing a memoir where you go off on a vein and you're not sure, you know, you talked about putting scenes together.
Right.
Sometimes it's a memory and you don't know if it's going to be there, but you just go with it.
Yes.
It's too long in kind of the sequence, but you know you want it and it's going to be parsed out over the period of the memoir. Can you talk about how you did talk about how the voice changed and then you went and took the 100 pages and sprinkled it. Can you talk more about, you know, how you take these bigger chunks and say, okay, that's good, but it's too much all at once?
Many times in the first draft of a memoir, and you all can talk about this, it will all be kind of scrunched up, and there won't be any artfulness to it. You just kind of get it down. So just allow that first draft to be awful and kind of full of big, giant detours, which is what you're talking about. I really love the refining process of a manuscript because I'm also an editor, and I love taking something from chapter 20 and making it the prologue, or finding a flashback that works to go back to childhood when you're an adult. But you can only do that when you have a draft. I don't think you could put that burden on yourself to be that far-sighted, to actually know where everything goes, unless you're a formula writer. Unless you're going to follow, as the gentleman over here is talking about the hero's journey. And I am with Maureen on that. I really believe those kind of constructs or formulas don't work because they take you away, as she said, from your own journey, which may be much more idiosyncratic, and you might not be a hero at all. Right? You might be a heroine taking a descent instead of an ascent. You never know. So I would say if you're at the, are you at a draft of your, you have a whole draft?
No, I have 25,000 words as of today out of 90,000 or whatever. So I have a big chunk done. But
So
I
you
keep
need
finding
to find
myself,
a critique group. You need to find, yeah, you really need to find good first readers. I don't publish anything without either Maureen or Marlene, and I always get their names mixed up. Seen it, and I'll say, I know. I'll send an email saying, oh my God, this is a Huffington Post, it has to go up this afternoon, can you please? And they're so great, and they'll edit it so that I'm never a fool in public, I hope.